Hey guys, what is going on? McMole2 here. Welcome back to my channel. Today, we're going to talk about territory battle. There's been a lot of questions about, you guys have been asking me a lot of stuff. I'm going to do a whole video here where we talk about what characters specifically you need to farm, what characters you should really gear up and grind and get ready for territory battles. And then we're also going to talk about platoon missions specifically. There's been a lot of questions there, some concerns, especially within my guild about coordination. So I'm going to give out some tips. We'll talk about what you need for platoon missions and how to best coordinate that. So let's go ahead and start talking about what characters you should really look at first, and then we will go from there. The first thing that you need to worry about is getting characters that can be suitable for combat missions. Your combat missions are going to be the mainstay of your territory battles. This is where you're going to be using a team where you're going to be fighting 6 waves of enemies. You can see here all this footage is coming from Mobile Gamer, so big thank you to him for donating this footage. You can see the first couple of waves, he has a really nicely geared team. He's just demolishing it on auto. Lando is just wiping out everybody, and he's just sweeping right through it. But as you will see, as you get further and further in, characters will start to get a lot harder. They'll take more damage. They'll also deal out more damage, and things are going to get a lot rougher, especially here with Wave 5. He basically hits a brick wall. It's doing a lot more damage to his team, and you can see that whenever he's defeating enemies, the enemy team is getting turn meter, they're gaining buffs, they're dealing a lot of damage. You see the ability blocks, so that is all something you have to watch out for. You'll see that it's just a lot harder to deal with these later waves, so it's going to be something where you have to really just kind of grind it out, get some really good characters, and that's going to bring up the first thing. Let's talk about some of the characters that you should really look at farming, like some different leaderships, some different abilities. Let's go ahead and dive into that. And these abilities are ones that are really focused on boosting survivability. You have Commander Cody with his clones. Clones are going to be light side characters. You're going to really need light side characters for territory battles. He's going to be able to help regenerate protection on your clones when they're using basic attacks. Really going to help build up that protection regeneration, help them stay alive for longer. Jin with her Zeta lead, she's going to give back protection every time a rebel ally gains a buff. You can use that with Chirrut. There's plenty of rebel allies who can buff up characters, so that's another lead you should really look at. And then finally you have Finn with his Zeta lead. Resistance characters are probably your best PvE team out there. They can sweep through galactic wars, they can quickly lock out the other team, really building up on the exposes, and the Zeta lead for Finn is really vital for that. Helps produce turn meter and also reduces cooldowns, really helps your resistance team go a lot faster. So those 3 leadership abilities, really good potential abilities to have for territory battles. Of course, they are all Zeta abilities, so heavy investment, but definitely some Zeta abilities are going to be really quite useful. Of course, with Jin, you can also use the debuffs coming in with her leadership ability. You don't have to worry about the buffs so much, but the exposes from the debuffs, that's also another facet to her team, so she's really going to be useful for that. And then finally, you can see on the right, there's 2 Phoenix Squad members here. Both of them give protection, regeneration, and health regeneration, so they're both really useful. We'll cover that more in detail when we talk about Phoenix Squad, because Phoenix Squad is going to be required for some of the later missions. So these are some abilities you should really look at getting if you're really looking at maximizing your score for combat mission. As the phases go on, you're actually going to get more and more points per wave from combat missions, so really look at making sure your team can survive the whole thing. That way you can maximize your territory points for your guild and then allow your guild to get better and better rewards. And you can see here, as Mobile Gamer is going through some of the later missions, you can see that you're going to need a 6-star Phoenix Squad for some of the combat missions later on. I mentioned before that you could use Zeb and Chopper for their useful abilities. Let's go ahead and talk more about Phoenix Squad, because there's questions about what would be your optimal Phoenix Squad for these kind of combat missions. And for your Phoenix Squad, you're actually going to need a Hera leadership ability. Without Hera's lead, you're not going to be able to share those uniques, and that's the main draw of your Phoenix Squad. Hera's lead allows Phoenix Squad allies to share their uniques among everybody. You are absolutely going to want Kanan, Ezra, and Sabine as well. Kanan gives counter chance and health regeneration whenever an ally suffers a debuff, and Empire allies, they are really going to give out a lot of debuffs, as you'll see in some of the combat mission footage. Without that healing from there, you're really going to have a hard time. Plus the counter chance, there's a lot of AoE abilities that's really going to help your Phoenix Squad attack more often. Ezra is going to give stacking offense to all Phoenix allies, 40% after 4 turns, it's a lot. And then Sabine, she gives 25% additional crit chance and damage to all Phoenix allies. You're going to need all 3 of those characters. For the 5th slot, I prefer Zeb. A lot of people can use Chopper instead. Zeb provides a lot of protection regeneration. He gives 30% if an ally is debuffed. That's a lot of protection regeneration. And you're going to have the healing from Kanan and his unique with the debuffs. Remember, there's going to be a lot of debuffs, so you're really going to get a lot of healing back between those 2 characters. Chopper, he brings some nice utility. He's got the buffs on his basic attack. He's another taunt if Kanan's having issues, but I think Kanan on his own, especially if you use Hera's backup plan, which can revive allies, I think Kanan's going to be enough of a tank to help things. Plus, he also has a cleanse here as well. So I think Kanan is going to be a really good tank. You won't really need a second tank in Chopper, and that's why I think you should go for Zeb instead. But you can absolutely go for Chopper instead. There's an argument for including either character in this, and I think the only 4 that you're absolutely going to need are Hera's your leadership, and then you're going to need Kanan, Ezra, and Sabine. The 5th slot is really optional between Zeb and Chopper. It's really up to your play style. And as Mobile's going through some of these missions here on the final stage, you can see you're going to need 7 and 6 star requirements on some of them. Ships are going to be 6 stars. And you'll see here in a minute, he's going to get to a mission that requires 7-star Rebels. There's another mission that requires 7-star light side characters. And then he's also going to run into a special mission that's going to require Captain Han Solo and Rebel Officer Leia Organa. Very tricky. We'll talk more about that with special missions here in a minute. But first, let's go ahead and talk about Rogue One characters, because you're going to see here in a minute, he's going to hit a mission that's going to require Rogue One 7-star characters. Let's go ahead and talk about Rogue One teams, what your optimal lineup for that is going to be. For your Rogue One team, you're going to have 3 tanks, you have 2 support characters, and 4 attackers. There's a total of 9 characters within Rogue One. Some people have been saying that Wedge and Biggs are Rogue One characters. That is absolutely not true. They are not Rogue One characters. If you hear someone saying that, slap them and tell them that they're wrong. Don't really slap them, that's wrong. Don't condone violence. Anyways, so yeah, these are your Rogue One characters. A total of 9 of them. You have your Glorious Lord, Pal there, and attackers. I've kind of ranked them in terms of which ones are the best. The top ones are really your best characters for each role. So like Baze is your best tank, Cassian is absolutely your best support, and Jin and Chirrut are absolutely your best attackers for Rogue One. So these are your Rogue One characters. Let's go ahead and talk about what your Rogue One optimal lineup is going to be. And this is your optimal lineup for Rogue One. You have Jin with her leadership. You don't have to have the Zeta there, but it's going to be really helpful because of all of the buffs coming out from this team. Cassian gives a lot of buffs at the start of the match. K2SO gains taunt a lot whenever he counterattacks. And then Chirrut, you guys know about Chirrut already. Chirrut gives out a ton of heal over time effects. He can give tenacity up. He's really going to be helpful with all those buffs. So having those 3 characters under a Jin Zeta lead is going to do a lot of protection regeneration for your team. Plus Cassian with the Zeta on his groundwork ability, which gives the buffs, also gives another 15% protection up at the start of each match. So there's a lot of protection regeneration. It's really going to help make this team survivable. Baze, his AoE dispel is going to be huge in this because you're being fighting Empire opponents the entire time. Baze's AoE does 25% max health damage to Empire enemies, and that is huge on its own. But if an Empire enemy does not have any buffs, it's going to deal another 25% on top of that. So his Dispel can deal 50% max health damage in one move against an unbuffed Empire opponent. That is a ton of damage. That's really going to make your fights a whole lot quicker. Plus, it's also a Dispel. So even if he doesn't do the 50% max damage, he's also going to be doing Dispels. So that's really going to be huge for taking out these Empire characters. And then, of course, with Jin's leadership, she gives out debuffs or whenever a Rebel ally does a debuff during that character's turn. Those exposes cannot be resisted. It's a 50% chance to apply an expose. So it's really RNG at the end. Cassian is going to be huge with this because he has 2 abilities. He has his grenade that gives out a lot of debuffs, and his crippling shot places all those debuffs on a one character, and each of those debuffs can apply expose. So you potentially get 5 or 6, maybe even 7 exposes in one turn thanks to that crippling shot, and it's a 3-turn cooldown as well. So Cassian is going to be huge. He's going to be your main damage dealer because of all the exposes. And then Chirrut and K2SO are really going to help bring up the protection. K2SO is going to counter a lot if he doesn't have any debuffs. He's going to taunt. He's going to gain that protection back thanks to the Jin Zeta. So this team right here, really survivable, does a lot of damage. This is your optimal Rogue One lineup. If you don't have someone like Baze, you could definitely look at using Scarab Rebel Pathfinder. He can get revived whenever he dies with a buff on him. He's always going to have buffs up because of Chirrut. He also gives speed up whenever he dies, so that's more buffs, more protection regeneration. So he's an optimal tank if you don't have Baze. Plus his basic gives 15% turn meter to all allies, so that's really vital there. If you don't have someone like Chirrut or Jin, if you don't have Jin, you're going to have a really rough time because there's not another leadership really you can use. But if you don't have Chirrut, you could look at using Pow or Bistam. Bistan can give a lot of turn meter whenever Rebel ally uses a special ability. He can put out dots, which is going to help put out more exposes. He can move fast, so he's another character. Pal can do offense up, he can do defense down to the opposing team, and he gains cooldown reductions every time a Rebel ally uses a basic attack. Those include counters, and you have 3 characters on this team that are really good at counters. So overall, this is your optimal Rogue One lineup, but the other characters I don't have listed here can be just as good for this team. Now, you guys saw that mission that requires Rebel characters at 7-star to complete that combat mission. Here are some of your really good Rebel leads. You have Commander Luke Skywalker. He gives counter chance defense and offense up. He can also give turn meter on his Zeta leadership. Jin, we've already covered. Same with Hera. If you're running a Phoenix squad in that final phase, definitely look at Hera. And then Wedge. Wedge is going to be a monster on offense. He gives a lot of damage. There's a lot of healing going on whenever a Rebel ally defeats an enemy or they score a critical hit. There is a lot of healing and turn meter boost with a Wedge lead in there. You saw when Mobile was autoing through, Lando was scoring critical hits like crazy. He was getting a lot of turn meter. He was healing up a lot. So a Wedge lead, if you're looking for a pure offensive Rebel team, Wedge is a very good leadership. Commander Luke is probably the weakest out of all these leaderships because his relies on a lot of counter. Counter teams are okay, but you want to go for a team that's going to be able to knock out the other team before the other team starts doing damage, because then you're really going to have a hard time. But if you do have Commander Luke Skywalker, you could definitely look at using him as a lead for any kind of Rebel team that you're using in combat missions. Now, going back to those special missions, you saw where you're going to need a Captain Han Solo and Rebel Officer Leia Organa. You can see I just kind of cropped images of them because they don't have their Swagoga portraits yet. But these are the characters you're absolutely going to need for your special missions. You're going to need a Commander Luke Skywalker, Hoth Rebel Scout and Soldier, Captain Han Solo, and Rebel Officer Leia Organa. You're going to have those 5 characters required for these special missions. Usually the special missions are to acquire maybe shards for Officer Leia Organa, special currency for guild events, but these are going to be special mission required characters, and you really should look at getting them to at least gear 9 each. You are going to need them at 7-star for those final phase missions. There's nothing you can do about that. You are going to have them at 7-star for those, and in order to get the mission for Rebel Officer Leia Organa shards, you will have to get Captain Han Solo. Thankfully, he is going to be going in at Cantina Mission 7D. There's also going to be a couple packs where you can buy him with crystals, so if you are looking at getting him up and ready to go right away for territory battles, definitely look at buying those packs, but otherwise, get ready for that slow grind in the Cantina missions. But yeah, these are definitely the characters you're really going to need to get for special missions. So we've talked about missions, we talked about the optimal character lineups that you want, what kind of leadership abilities you should really look for. Let's go ahead and talk about platoon missions. Let's go ahead and close it up with that. For your platoon missions, there are special abilities or buffs that you're going to get, and what's going to happen is there are 6 separate platoons. Each platoon is going to require 15 certain characters. These characters do not require gear levels. They are only focused on stars. If you have the correct stars for this, then you can donate these characters to platoons. But one thing I should warn you is once you donate a character to a platoon, you're not going to be able to use that character for the rest of that phase anywhere else. So make sure that you go for platoon missions first, because without these platoon missions, you're going to lose out on those buffs or abilities. That's really going to hurt your potential overall for really doing well here. So you can see Mobile donated 10 characters to that first platoon, and you can donate a total of 15 per platoon. And once you fill out a platoon, you also gain a certain amount of territory points. So making sure you fill out each platoon correctly is going to give a lot of territory points, and then of course that's really going to help with your guild rewards. When it comes to coordinating these platoon missions, this is probably going to be the most difficult thing overall for territory battles, because you have to use specific characters. This requires a lot of thought, a lot of checking, coordination with everybody, and making sure that everybody can contribute to these platoon missions as much as possible. So here are some tips to help with this. Make a list for each platoon character needed for each separate platoon. That way you know ahead of time what you need for each one. That way you can be ready for that. And it should be noted that platoon missions are going to be any light side characters. There's no emphasis on Rebel or any kind of faction. It's going to be light side characters only. There are not going to be dark side characters in these platoon missions. So that's really helped that you just have to focus on light side characters. Double check against the rosters for all of your guild members. Make sure that you have a list of who has what light side characters so you're ready to go here. And the best thing here is gear levels don't count, only stars. So if you have something like a Gear 1 Old Ben that's at 4 stars, that character is going to be much more useful for your platoon missions than, say, a Gear 11 4-star Old Ben, because that Gear 11 Ben is going to be able to be used in a combat mission perhaps, or be deployed onto the battlefield for that extra territory points. And that's going to give more return there instead of using that gear 1 for deployment, because then you're going to get more territory points overall. You should also prioritize your more valuable characters with lower gear levels, like your Phoenix, your Rogue One characters, any kind of rebel. If you have a lower gear rebel character that you can throw into a platoon, use that character first, because the higher gear ones are going to do better in combat missions. They're going to be able to give more territory points there. And of course, you already covered light side characters only for platoon missions, so don't worry about dark side characters. So these are some tips. This is a good guideline on how you want to coordinate, and just kind of use this as a guide to really help you figure out what are some good ways to coordinate with these platoon missions, because this is going to be the most difficult thing. That's going to be hard for your guilds to coordinate. There's going to be a lot of talking, a lot of double checking. This is going to take time. So these are some tips for platoon missions. So that is pretty much it for this video, guys. I know it's a lot of information, a lot of stuff to go over. It seems overwhelming, but once you start playing territory battles, you're going to get the hang of it, and you're going to be able to figure out these things a lot more easy. So this is just a guide to help you guys get ready. If you guys liked what you saw, feel free to like and share this video. Subscribe to my channel for more content in the future. And as always, guys, I will talk to you all later.